Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well. I know this has not really been particularly easy for anybody, but we're gonna do the best we can with this. Today, what I'm gonna have you guys do is I'm just gonna have you listen to the last two chapters of Part Time Indian. I'll be reading them for you. And you'll need this to kind of do like the next couple assignments. So make sure that if you're trying to do your other assignments, listen to this first. That'll be a huge help to you. We have two chapters left. The first one is called Because Russian Guys Are Not Always Geniuses. And the second one is called Remembering. I'm going to try and upload a few more YouTube videos for you guys just to make things easier for you. I feel like I read all the time for you anyway, so it shouldn't be that big of a transition. Anyway, here we go. After my grandmother died, I felt like crawling into the coffin with her. After my dad's best friend got shot in the face, I wondered if I was destined to get shot in the face too. Considering how many young Spokaneans have died in car wrecks, I'm pretty sure it's my destiny to die in a wreck too. Geez, I've been to so many funerals in my short life. I'm 14 years old, and I've been to 42 funerals. That's really the biggest difference between Indians and white people. A few of my white classmates have been to a grandparent's funeral. A few of them have lost an aunt and uncle, and one guy's brother died of leukemia when he was in third grade. But there's nobody who has been to more than 5 funerals. All my white friends can count their deaths on one hand. I can count my fingers, toes, arms, legs, eyes, ears, nose, penis, butt cheeks, and nipples, and still not get close to my deaths. And you know what the worst part is? The unhappy part? About 90% of the deaths have been because of alcohol. Gordy gave me this book by a Russian dude named Tolstoy, who wrote, "Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way." Well, I hate to argue with a Russian genius, but Tolstoy didn't know Indians. And he didn't know that all Indian families are unhappy for the exact same reason. The freaking booze. Yep, so let me pour a drink for Tolstoy and let him think hard about the true definition of unhappy families. So, okay. You're probably thinking I'm being extra bitter. And I would have to agree with you. I am being extra bitter. So let me tell you why. Today, around 9 a.m., as I sat in chemistry, there was a knock on the door, and Miss Warren, the guidance counselor, stepped into the room. Dr. Noble, the chemistry teacher, hates being interrupted, so he gave the old stink eye to Miss Warren. "Can I help you, Miss Warren?" Dr. Noble asked, except he made it sound like an insult. Yes, she said. "May I speak to Arnold in private?" "Can this wait? We're going to have a quiz in a few moments." "I need to speak with him now, please." "Fine. Arnold, please go with Miss Warren." I gathered up my books and followed Miss Warren out into the hallway. I was a little worried. I wondered if I'd done something wrong. I couldn't think of anything that I'd done that would merit punishment, but I was still worried. I didn't want to get in any kind of trouble. "What's going on, Miss Warren?" I asked. She suddenly started crying, weeping, just these big old whooping tears. I thought she was going to fall over on the floor and start screaming and kicking like a 2-year-old. "Geez, Miss Warren, what is it? What's wrong?" She hugged me hard. And I have to admit that it felt pretty dang good. Miss Warren was like 50 years old, but she was still pretty hot. She was all skinny and muscular because she jogged all the time, so I sort of physically reacted to her hug. And the thing is, Miss Warren was hugging me pretty tight, so I was pretty sure she could feel my physical reaction. I was kind of proud, you know? "Arnold," she said, "I'm sorry, but I just got a phone call from your mother. It's your sister. She's passed away." "What do you mean?" I asked. I knew what she meant, but I wanted her to say something else. Anything else. "Your sister is gone," Miss Warren said. "I know she's gone," I said. "She lives in Montana now." I knew I was being an idiot, but I figured if I kept being an idiot, if I didn't actually accept the truth, then the truth would become false. "No," Miss Warren said, "your sister, she's dead." And that was it. I couldn't fake my way around that. Dead is dead. I was stunned, but I wasn't sad. The grief didn't hit me right away. No, I was mostly ashamed of my physical reaction to the hug. Yep, I had a big erection when I learned of my sister's death. How perverted is that? How inappropriately hormonal can one boy be? How did she die? I asked. Your father's going to get you, Miss Warren said. He'll be here in a few minutes. You can wait in my office. How did she die? I asked again. Your father's going to get you, Miss Warren said again. And then I knew that she didn't want to tell me how my sister had died. I figured it must have been an awful death. Was she murdered? I asked. Your father is coming. Man, Miss Warren was a lame counselor. She didn't know what to say to me. But then again, I couldn't really blame her. She'd never counseled a student whose sibling had just died. Was my sister murdered? I asked. Please, Miss Warren said, you need to talk to your father. She looked so sad that I let it go. Well, I mostly let it go. I certainly didn't want to wait in her office. The guidance office was filled with self-help books and inspirational posters and SAT test books and college brochures and scholarship applications, and I knew that none of that, absolutely none of it, meant shit. I knew I'd probably tear her office apart if I had to wait in there. Miss Warren, I said, I want to wait outside. But it's snowing, she said. Well, that would make it perfect then, wouldn't it? I said. It was a rhetorical question, meaning there wasn't supposed to be an answer, right? But Miss Warren, she answered my rhetorical question. Oh, I don't think it's a good idea to wait in the snow, she said. You're very vulnerable right now. Vulnerable. She told me I was vulnerable. My big sister was dead. Of course I was vulnerable. I was a reservation Indian attending an all-white school, and my sister just died some horrible death. I was the most vulnerable kid in the United States. Miss Warren was obviously trying to win the Captain Obvious Award. I'm waiting outside. I said, I'll wait with you. She said, kiss my ass, I said, and ran. Miss Warren tried to run after me, but she was wearing heels and she was crying and she was absolutely freaked out by my reaction to the bad news, by my cursing. She was nice. Too nice to deal with death. She just ran a few feet before she stopped and slumped against the wall. I ran by my locker, grabbed my coat, and headed outside. There was maybe a foot of snow on the ground already. It was going to be a big storm. I suddenly worried that my father was going to wreck his car on the icy roads. Oh man, wouldn't that just be perfect? Yep, how Indian would that be? Imagine the stories I could tell. Yeah, when I was a kid, just after I learned that my big sister died, I also found out that my father died in a car wreck on the way to pick me up from school. So I was absolutely terrified as I waited. I prayed to God that my father would come driving up in his old car. Please, God, don't kill my dad. Please, God, don't kill my dad. Please, God, don't kill my dad. 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes went by. I was freezing. My hands and feet were blocks of ice. Snot ran down my face and my ears were burning. Dad, please, Dad, please, please, Dad, please, Dad. Oh man, I was absolutely convinced that my father was dead too. It had been too long. He'd driven his car off a cliff and had drowned in the Spokane River, or he'd lost control, slid across the center lane, and spun right into the path of a logging truck. Dad, 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 Dad. And just when I thought I'd start screaming and run around like a crazy man, my father drove up. I started laughing. I was so relieved, so happy that I'd laughed, and I couldn't stop laughing. I ran down the hill, jumped into the car, and hugged my dad. I laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. Junior, he said, what's wrong with you? You're alive, I shouted. You're alive. But your sister, he said. I know, I said, she's dead, but you're alive. You're still alive. I laughed and laughed. I couldn't stop laughing. I felt like I might die of laughing. I couldn't figure out why I was laughing, but I kept laughing as my dad drove out of Reardon and headed through the storm back to the reservation. And then, finally, we crossed the reservation border. I stopped laughing. How did she die? I asked. There was a big party at her house, her trailer in Montana, he said. Yet my sister and her husband lived in some old silver trailer that was more like a TV dinner tray than a home. They had a big party, my father said. Of course they had a big party. Of course they were drunk. They're Indians. They had a big party, my father said, and your sister and her husband passed out in the back room. And somebody tried to cook some soup on a hot plate, and they forgot about it and left. And a curtain drifted in on the wind and caught the hot plate, and the trailer burned down quick. I swear to you that I could hear my sister screaming. The police said your sister never even woke up. My father said she drank way too much. My dad was trying to comfort me, but it's not too comforting to learn that your sister was too freaking drunk to feel any pain when she burned to death. And for some reason, that thought made me laugh even harder. I was laughing so hard that I threw up a little bit in my mouth. I spit out a piece of cantaloupe, which is weird because I don't like cantaloupe. I've hated cantaloupe since I was a little kid. I couldn't remember the last time I had eaten the evil fruit. And then I remembered that my sister had always loved cantaloupe. Ain't that weird? It was so freaky that I laughed even harder than I'd already been laughing. I started pounding the dashboard and stomping on the floor. I was going absolutely insane with laughter. And my dad didn't say a word. He just stared straight ahead and drove home. I laughed the whole way. Well, I laughed until we were about halfway home, and then I fell asleep. Snap, just like that. Things had gotten so intense, so painful, that my body just checked out. Yep, my mind and soul and heart had a quick meeting and voted to shut down for a few repairs. And guess what? I dreamed about cantaloupe. Well, I dreamed about a school picnic that I went to way back when I was 7 years old. There were hot dogs and hamburgers and soda pop and potato chips and watermelon and cantaloupe. I ate like 7 pieces of cantaloupe. My hands and face were sticky and sweet. I'd eaten so much cantaloupe that I turned into a cantaloupe. Well, I finished my lunch and I ran around the playground laughing and screaming when I felt this tickle on my cheek. I reached up to scratch my face and squished the wasp that had been sucking sugar off my cheek. Have you ever been stung in the face? Well, I have, and that's why I hate cantaloupe. So I woke up from this dream, this nightmare, just as my dad drove the car up to our house. We're here, he said. My sister's dead, I said. Yes. I was hoping I dreamed that, I said. Me too. I dreamed about that time I got stung by the wasp, I said. I remember that, Dad said. We had to take you to the hospital. I thought I was going to die. We were scared too. My dad started to cry. Not big tears, just little ones. He breathed deep and tried to stop them. I guess he wanted to be strong in front of his son, but it didn't work. He kept crying. I didn't cry. I reached out, wiped the tears off my father's face, and tasted them. Salty. I love you, he said. Wow. He hardly ever said that to me. I love you too, I said. I never said that to him. We walked into the house. My mom was curled into a ball on the couch. There were like 25 or 30 cousins there eating all of our food. Somebody dies and people eat your food. Funny how that works. Mom, I said. Oh, Junior, she said, and pulled me onto the couch with her. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Don't leave me, she said. Don't ever leave me. She was freaking out, but who could blame her? She'd lost her mother and her daughter in just a few months. Whoever recovers from a thing like that? Whoever gets better? I knew that my mother was now broken and that she'd always be broken. Don't you ever drink, my mother said to me. She slapped me. Once, twice, 3 times. She slapped me hard. Promise me you'll never drink. Okay, I promise, I said. I couldn't believe it. My sister killed herself with booze and I was the one getting slapped? Where was Leo Tolstoy when I needed him? I kept wishing he'd show up so my mother could slap him instead. Well, my mother quit slapping me, thank God, but she held on to me for hours. Held on to me like I was a baby, and she kept crying. So many tears. My clothes and hair were soaked with her tears. It was like my mother had given me a grief shower, you know? Like she'd baptized me with her pain. Of course, it was way too weird to watch, so all my cousins left, and my dad just went in his bedroom. It was just my mother and me, just her tears and me. But I didn't cry. I just hugged my mother back and wanted all of it to be over. I wanted to fall asleep again and dream about killer wasps. Yeah, I figured any nightmare would be better than my reality. And then it was over. My mother fell asleep and let me go. I just stood and walked into the kitchen. I was way hungry, but my cousins had eaten most of our food, so all I had for dinner were saltine crackers and water. Like I was in jail. Man. 2 days later, we buried my sister in the Catholic graveyard down near the powwow ground. I barely remember the wake. I barely remember the funeral service. I barely remember the burial. I was in this weird fog. No, it was more like I was in this small room, the smallest room in the world. I could reach out and touch the walls, which were made out of greasy glass. I could see shadows, but I couldn't see details, And I was cold, just freezing. Like there was a snowstorm blowing inside of my chest. But all of that fog and greasy glass and snow disappeared when they lowered my sister's coffin into the grave. And let me tell you, it had taken them forever to dig that grave in the frozen ground. As the coffin settled into the dirt, it made this noise, almost like a breath, Like a sigh. Like the coffin was settling down for a long, long nap. For a forever nap. And that was it. I had to get out of there. I ran out of the graveyard and into the woods across the road. I planned on running deep into the woods, so deep that I'd never be found. But guess what? I ran full speed into Rowdy and sent both of us sprawling. Yep, Rowdy had been hiding in the woods while he watched the burial. Wow. Rowdy sat up, and I sat up too. We sat there together. Rowdy was crying. His face was shiny with tears. Rowdy, I said, "You're crying." "I ain't crying, you're crying," he said. I touched my face. It was dry, no tears yet. "I can't remember how to cry," I said. That made Rowdy sort of choke. He gasped a little, and more tears rolled down his face. "You're crying," I said. "No, I'm not." "It's okay. I miss my sister too. I love her." I said, "I'm not crying. It's okay." I reached out and touched Rowdy's shoulder. Big mistake. He punched me. Well, he almost punched me. He threw a punch, but he missed. Rowdy missed a punch. His fist went sailing over my head. "Wow," I said, "you missed. Missed on purpose." "No, you didn't. You missed because your eyes are filled with tears." That made me laugh. Yep, I started laughing like a crazy man again. I rolled around on the cold, frozen ground and laughed and laughed and laughed. I didn't want to laugh. I wanted to stop laughing. I wanted to grab Rowdy and hang on to him. He was my best friend, and I needed him. But I couldn't stop laughing. I looked at Rowdy, and he was crying hard now. He thought I was laughing at him. Normally, Rowdy would have absolutely murdered anybody who dared to laugh at him, but this was not a normal day. "It's your fault," he said. "What's my fault?" I asked. "Your sister is dead because you left us. You killed her." That made me stop laughing. I suddenly felt like I might never laugh again. Rowdy was right. I had killed my sister. Well, I didn't kill her, but she only got married so quickly and left the res because I left the res first. She was only living in Montana in a cheap trailer house because I had gone to school in Reardon. She burned to death because I had decided that I wanted to spend my life with white people. It was all my fault. "I hate you," Rowdy screamed. "I hate you. I hate you." And then he jumped up and ran away. Rowdy ran. He'd never run away from anything or anybody, but now he was running. I watched him disappear into the woods. I wondered if I'd ever see him again. The next morning, I went to school. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to sit at home all day and talk to a million cousins. I knew my mother would be cooking food for everybody and that my father would be hiding out in his bedroom again. I knew that everybody would tell stories about Mary. And the whole time I'd be thinking, yeah, but have you ever heard the story about how I killed my sister and left the res? And the whole time, everybody would be drinking booze and getting drunk and stupid and sad and mean. Yeah. Doesn't that make sense? How do we honor the drunken death of a young married couple? Hey, let's get drunk. Okay, listen, I'm not a cruel bastard, okay? I know that people were very sad. I knew that my sister's death made everybody remember all the deaths in their life. I know that death is never added to death. It multiplies. But still, I couldn't stay and watch all those people get drunk. I couldn't do it. If you'd given me a room full of sober Indians crying and laughing and telling stories about my sister, then I would have gladly stayed and joined them in the ceremony, but everybody was drunk, and everybody was unhappy, and they were drunk and unhappy in the exact same way. So I fled my house and I went to school. I walked through the snow for a few miles until a white BIA worker picked me up and delivered me to the front door. I walked inside, into the crowded hallways, and all sorts of boys and girls and teachers came up and hugged me and slapped my shoulder and gave me little punches in the belly. They were worried for me. They wanted to help me with my pain. I was important to them. I mattered. Wow. All these white kids and teachers who were so suspicious of me when I first arrived had learned to care about me. Maybe some of them even loved me, and I'd been so suspicious of them. And now I care about a lot of them and loved a few of them. Penelope came up to me last. She was weeping. Snot ran down her face, and it was still sort of sexy. "I'm so sorry about your sister," she said. I didn't know what to say to her. What do you say to people when they ask you how it feels to lose everything? When every planet in your solar system has exploded? All right, so we got a nice little illustration here about Junior's report card. Oh, there it is. And now we are on to the last chapter called Remembering. Hope you're all doing okay and hanging in there. I apologize for any ambient sounds here. We've got like a leak in our toilet, so it sounds like it's constantly running. And I think that's, if you haven't heard that, now you have. It's running right now. So great. Anyway, remembering. Today, my mother, father, and I went to the cemetery and cleaned graves. We took care of grandmother's spirit, Eugene, and Mary. Mom had packed a picnic, and Dad had brought his saxophone, so we made a whole day of it. We Indians know how to celebrate our dead. And I felt okay. My mother and father held hands and kissed each other. "You can't make out in a graveyard," I said. "Love and death," my father said. "It's all love and death." "You're crazy," I said. "I'm crazy about you," he said. And he hugged me. And he hugged my mother. And she had tears in her eyes, and she held my face in her hands. "Junior," she said, "I'm so proud of you." That was the best thing she could have said. In the middle of a crazy and drunk life, you have to hang on to the good and sober moments tightly. I was happy, but I still missed my sister, and no amount of love and trust was going to make that better. I love her. I will always love her. I mean, she was amazing. It was courageous of her to leave the basement and move to Montana. She went searching for her dreams, and she didn't find them, but she made the attempt. And I was making the attempt too. And maybe it would have killed me too, but I knew that staying on the res would have killed me too. It all made me cry for my sister. It made me cry for myself. But I was crying for my tribe too. I was crying because I knew 5 or 10 or 15 or more Spokanes would die during the next year, and that most of them would die because of booze. I cried because so many of my fellow tribal members were slowly killing themselves, and I wanted them to live. I wanted them to get strong and sober and get the hell off the res. It's a weird thing. Reservations were meant to be prisons, you know? Indians were supposed to move onto reservations and die. We were supposed to disappear. But somehow or another, Indians have forgotten that reservations were meant to be death camps. I wept because I was the only one who was brave and crazy enough to leave the res. I was the only one with enough arrogance. I wept and wept and wept because I knew that I was never going to drink, and because I was never going to kill myself, and because I was going to have a better life out there in the white world. I realized that I might be a lonely Indian boy, but I was not alone in my loneliness. There were millions of other Americans who had left their birthplaces in search of a dream. I realized that sure, I was a Spokane Indian, but I belonged to that tribe. But I also belonged to the tribe of American immigrants, and to the tribe of basketball players, and to the tribe of bookworms, and the tribe of cartoonists, and the tribe of chronic masturbators, and the tribe of teenage boys, and the tribe of small town kids, and the tribe of Pacific Northwesterners, and the tribe of tortilla chips and salsa lovers, and the tribe of poverty, and the tribe of funeral goers, and the tribe of beloved sons, and the tribe of boys who really miss their best friends. It was a huge revelation. And that's when I knew I was going to be okay. But it also reminded me of the people who were not going to be okay. It made me think of Rowdy. I missed him so much. I wanted to find him and hug him and beg him to forgive me for leaving. Oh, whoops. That was the second to last chapter, and this is the last one. It's called Talking About Turtles. Oh, there we go. Here we go. A nice little illustration of Rowdy and Junior jumping into Turtle Lake, which we're going to read about now. Okay, here we go. The reservation is beautiful. I mean it. Take a look. There are pine trees everywhere. Thousands of ponderosa pine trees, millions. I guess maybe you can take pine trees for granted. They're just pine trees. But they're tall and thin and green and brown and big. Some of the pines are 90 feet tall and more than 300 years old. Older than the United States. Some of them were alive when Abraham Lincoln was president. Some of them were alive when George Washington was president. Some of them were alive when Benjamin Franklin was born. I'm talking old. I've probably climbed like 100 different trees in my lifetime. There are 12 in my backyard, another 50 or 60 in the small stand of woods across the field, and another 20 or 30 around our little town. And a few way out in the deep woods. And that tall monster that sits beside the highway to West End past Turtle Lake. That one is way over 100 feet tall. It might be 150 feet tall. You could build a house using just the wood from that tree. When we were little, like 10 years old, Rowdy and I climbed that sucker. It was probably stupid. Yeah, okay. It was stupid. It's not like we were lumberjacks or anything. It's not like we used anything except our hands and feet and dumb luck. But we weren't afraid of falling that day. Other days, yeah, I'm terrified of falling. No matter how old I get, I think I'm always going to be scared of falling. But I wasn't scared of gravity on that day. Heck, gravity didn't even exist. It was July. Crazy hot and dry. It hadn't rained in like 60 days. Drought hot. Scorpion hot. Vultures flying circles in the sky hot. Mostly, Rowdy and I just sat in the basement room, which was maybe 5 degrees cooler than the rest of the house, and read books and watched TV and played video games. Mostly Rowdy and I just sat still and dreamed about air conditioning. When I get rich and famous, Rowdy said, I'm going to have a house that has an air conditioner in every room. Sears has those big air conditioners that can cool a whole house, I said. Just one machine? Rowdy asked. Yeah, you can put it outside and you connect it through the air vents and stuff. Wow, how much does that cost? Like a few $1,000, I think. I'll never have that much money. You will when you play in the NBA. Yeah, but I'll probably have to play pro basketball in like Sweden or Norway or Russia or something, and I won't need air conditioning. I'll probably live in like an igloo and own reindeer or something. You're going to play for Seattle, man. Yeah, right. Rowdy didn't believe in himself. Not much. So I tried to pump him up. You're the toughest kid on the res, I said. I know, he said. You're the fastest and the strongest, and the most handsome, too. If I had a dog with a face like yours, I'd shave its ass and teach it to walk backwards. I once had a zit that looked like you, and then I popped it, and then it looked even more like you. This one time, I ate like 3 hot dogs and a bowl of clam chowder, and then I got diarrhea all over the floor, and it looks like you. And then you ate it, Rowdy said. We laughed ourselves silly. We laughed ourselves sweaty. Don't make me laugh, I said. It's too hot to laugh. It's too hot to sit in this house. Let's go swimming. Where? Turtle Lake. Okay, I said. But I was scared of Turtle Lake. It was a small body of water, maybe only a mile around, maybe less, but it was deep. Crazy deep. Nobody had ever been to the bottom. I'm not a very good swimmer, so I was always afraid I'd sink and drown and they'd never, ever find my body. One year, these scientists came with a mini submarine and tried to find the bottom. But the lake was so silty and muddy that they couldn't see. And the nearby uranium mine made their radar and sonar machines go nuts, so they couldn't see that way either. So they never made it to the bottom. The lake is round. Perfectly round. So scientists said it was probably an ancient and dormant volcano crater. Yeah, a volcano on the res. The lake was so deep because the volcano crater and tunnels and lava chutes and all that plumbing went way down to the center of the earth. That lake was like forever deep. There were all sorts of myths and legends surrounding the lake. I mean, we're Indians. We like to make shit up about lakes, you know? Some people said the lake is named Turtle because it's round and green like a turtle shell. Some people said it's named Turtle because it used to be filled with regular turtles. Some people said it's named Turtle because it used to be home to this giant snapping turtle that ate Indians. A Jurassic turtle. A Steven Spielberg turtle. A King Kong versus the giant reservation turtle. I didn't exactly believe in the giant turtle myth. I was too old and smart for that, but I'm still an Indian, and we like to be scared. I don't know what it is about us, but we love ghosts. We love monsters. But I was really scared of this other story about Turtle Lake. My dad told me the story. When he was a kid, he watched a horse drown in Turtle Lake and disappear. Some of the others say it was a giant turtle that grabbed the horse, Dad said, but they're lying. They were just being silly. That horse was just stupid. It was so stupid we named it Stupid Horse. Well, Stupid Horse sank into the endless depths of Turtle Lake, and everybody figured that was the end of the story. But a few weeks later, Stupid Horse's body washed up on the shores of Benjamin Lake, 10 miles away from Turtle Lake. Everybody just figured some joker had found the body and moved it, Dad said, to scare people. People laughed at the practical joke. Then a bunch of guys threw the dead horse in the back of a truck, drove it to the dump, and burned it. A simple story, right? No, it doesn't end there. Well, a few weeks after they burned the body, a bunch of kids were swimming in Turtle Lake when it caught fire. Yes, the whole lake caught on fire. The kids were swimming close to the dock because the lake was so deep. Most kids swam close to the shore, and the fire started out in the middle of the lake, so the kids were able to safely climb out of the water before it all went up like a big bowl of gasoline. It burned for a few hours, Dad said. Burned hot and fast. And then it went out, just like that. People stayed away for a few days then went to take a look at the damage, you know? And guess what they found? Stupid Horse, washed up on the shore again. Despite being burned at the dump and burned again in the lake of fire, Stupid Horse was untouched. Well, the horse was still dead, of course, but it was unburned. Nobody went near the horse after that. They just let it rot. But it took a long time. Too long. For weeks, the dead body just lay there. It didn't go bad or anything. Didn't stink. The bugs and animals stayed away. Only after a few weeks did Stupid Horse finally let go. His skin and flesh melted away. The maggots and coyotes ate their fill. Then the horse was just bones. Let me tell you, Dad said, that was just about the scariest thing I've ever seen. That horse skeleton lying there. It was pretty freaky. After a few more weeks, the skeleton collapsed into a pile of bones, and the water and wind dragged them away. It was a freaky story. Nobody swam in Turtle Lake for like 10, 11 years, Dad said. I don't think anybody should be swimming in there now, but people forget. They forget good things, and they forget bad things. They forget that lakes can catch on fire. They forget that dead horses can magically vanish and reappear. I mean, geez, we Indians are just weird. So anyway, on that hot summer day, Rowdy and I walked the 5 miles from my house to Turtle Lake. All the way I thought about fire and horses, but I wasn't going to tell Rowdy about that. He would have just called me a wuss or a pussy. He would have just said it was kid stuff. He would have just said it was a hot day that needed a cold lake. As we walked, I saw that monster pine tree ahead of us. It was so tall and green and beautiful. It was the only reservation skyscraper, you know? I love that tree, I said. That's because you're a tree fag, Rowdy said. I'm not a tree fag, I said. Then how come you like to stick your dick inside knotholes? Stick my dick in the girl trees, I said. Rowdy laughed this ha-ha, hee-hee avalanche laugh. I love to make him laugh. I was the only one who knew how to make him laugh. Hey, he said, you know what we should do? I hated when Rowdy asked that particular question. It meant we were about to do something dangerous. What should we do? I asked. We should climb that monster. The tree? No, we should climb your big head, he said. Of course I'm talking about the tree, the biggest tree on the res. It wasn't really open to debate. I had to climb the tree. Rowdy knew I had to climb the tree with him. I couldn't back down. That wasn't how our friendship worked. We're gonna die, I said. Probably, Rowdy said. So we walked over to the tree and looked up. It was way tall. I got dizzy. You first, Rowdy said. I spit on my hands and rubbed them together and reached up for the first branch. I pulled myself up to the next branch, and then the next branch, and the next branch, and the next, and Rowdy followed me. Branch by branch, Rowdy and I climbed toward the top of the tree, to the bottom of the sky. Near the top, the branches got thinner and thinner. I wondered if they support our weight. I kept expecting one of them to snap and send me plummeting to my death. But it didn't happen. The branches would not break. Rowdy and I climbed and climbed and climbed. We made it to the top. Well, almost to the top. Even Rowdy was too scared to step on the thinnest branches, so we made it within 10 feet of the top. Not the summit, but close enough to call it the summit. We clung tightly to the tree as it swung in the breeze. I was scared, sure, terrified, but it was fun, you know? We were more than 100 feet in the air. From our vantage point, we could see for miles. We could see from one end of the reservation to the other. We could see our entire world. And our entire world at that moment was green and golden and perfect. Wow, I said. It's pretty, Rowdy said. I've never seen anything so pretty. It was the only time I'd ever heard him talk like that. We stayed in the top of the tree for an hour or two. We didn't want to leave. I thought maybe we'd stay up there and die. I thought maybe 200 years later, scientists would find 2 boy skeletons stuck in the top of that tree, but Rowdy broke the spell. He farted a greasy one. A greasy, smelly one that sounded like it was half solid. Jeez, I said. I think you just killed the tree. We laughed. And then we climbed down. I don't know if anybody else has ever climbed that tree. I look at it now, years later, and I can't believe we did it. And I can't believe I survived my first year at Reardon. After the last day of school ended, I didn't do much. It was summer. I wasn't supposed to do anything. I mostly sat in my room and read comics. I missed my white friends and white teachers and my translucent semi-girlfriend, Penelope. I hope she was thinking of me. I'd already written her like 3 love letters, and I had hoped she'd write me back. Gordy wanted to come to the res and stay with us for a week or two. How crazy is that? And Roger, heading to Eastern Washington on a football scholarship, had willed his basketball uniform to me. You're going to be a star, he said. I felt hopeful and silly about the future. And then yesterday, I was sitting in the living room watching some nature show about honeybees when there was a knock on the door. Come in, I shouted. And Rowdy walked inside. Wow, I said. Yeah, he said. We'd always been such scintillating conversationalists. What are you doing here? I asked. I'm bored, he said. The last time I saw you, you tried to punch me, I said. I missed. I thought you were going to break my nose. I wanted to break your nose. You know, I said, it's probably not the best thing in the world to do, punching a hydra on the skull. Ah, shoot. He said, I couldn't give you any more brain damage than you already got, and besides, didn't I give you 1 concussion already? Yep, and the 3 stitches on my forehead. Hey, man, I had nothing to do with those stitches. I only do concussions. I laughed and he laughed. I thought you hated me, I asked. I do, he said, but I'm bored. So what? So you want to maybe shoot some hoops? For a second, I thought about saying no. I thought about telling him to bite my ass. I thought about making him apologize, but I couldn't. He was never going to change. Let's go, I said. We walked over to the courts behind the high school. 2 old hoops with chain nets. We just shot lazy jumpers for a few minutes. We didn't talk. Didn't need to talk. We were basketball twins. Of course, Rowdy got hot, hit 15 or 20 in a row, and I rebounded and kept passing the ball to him. And then I got hot and hit 21 in a row, and Rowdy rebounded for me. You want to go one-on-one? Rowdy said. Yeah. You never beaten me one-on-one, he said. You pussy. Yeah, that's going to change. Not today, he said. Maybe not today, I said, but someday. Your ball, he said, and passed it to me. I spun the rock in my hands. Where are you going to school next year? I asked. Where do you think, dumbass? Right here, where I've always been. You could come to Reardon with me. You already asked me that once. Yeah, but I asked you a long time ago. Before everything happened. Before we knew stuff. So I'm asking you again. Come to Reardon with me. Rowdy breathed deeply. For a second, I thought he was going to cry. Really, I expected him to cry, but he didn't. You know, I was reading this book, he said. Wow, you're reading a book, I said, mock surprised. Eat me, he said, and we laughed. So anyway, he said, I was reading this book about old-time Indians, about how we used to be nomadic. Yeah, I said. So I looked up nomadic in the dictionary, and it means people who move around, who keep moving, in search of food and water and grazing land. Yeah, that sounds about right. Well, the thing is, I don't think Indians are nomadic anymore. Most Indians, anyway. No, we're not, I said. I'm not nomadic, right? He said. Hardly anybody in this res is nomadic. Except for you. You're the nomadic one. Whatever. No, I'm serious. I always knew you were going to leave. I always knew you were going to leave us behind and travel the world. I had this dream about you a few months ago. You were standing on the Great Wall of China. You looked so happy. And I was happy for you. Rowdy didn't cry, but I did. You're an old-time nomad, Rowdy said. You're going to keep moving all over the world in search of food and water and grazing land. And that's pretty cool. I could barely talk. Thank you, I said. Yeah, Rowdy said. Just make sure you send me postcards, you asshole. From everywhere, I said. I would always love Rowdy. And I would always miss him too. Just as I would always love and miss my grandmother, my big sister, and Eugene. Just as I would always miss my reservation and my tribe. I hoped and prayed that they would someday forgive me for leaving them. I hoped and prayed that I would someday forgive myself for leaving them. Oh man, Rowdy said, stop crying. We still know each other when we're old men, I asked. Who knows anything, Rowdy said. Then he threw me the ball. Quit your blubbering, he said, and play ball. I wiped my tears away, dribbled once, twice, and pulled up for a jumper. Rowdy and I played one-on-one for hours. We played until dark. We played until the street lights lit up the court. We played until the bats swooped down at our heads. We played until the moon was huge and golden and perfect in the dark sky. And we didn't keep score. Okay, well, that's the end of the book. Guys, I'll be holding virtual office hours every day from 10 to 12. So if you have any questions about the ending, or if you just kind of want to talk about your thoughts about the book, you can do that there. But I hope this was helpful, and I'll be making some more of these in the future. So thanks. Have a good one, guys.